While millions of people are screaming at their televisions, painting their faces, hugging strangers, and letting the outcome of a single game decide whether their night ends in joy or quiet misery, there's another group sitting in the same room feeling absolutely nothing. No excitement, no anger, no heartbreak, just silence. And if you're part of that group, you've probably noticed how strange it feels to be surrounded by so much emotion that you simply don't share. You look around and wonder how something that means so much to everyone else can feel so empty to you. You might even question yourself. Am I broken? Am I disconnected? Am I missing some essential human experience? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't an attack on sports or the people who love them. It's a psychological explanation that might finally make you feel understood. There's an unspoken assumption in society that caring about sports is normal and not caring is strange. That assumption is so deeply embedded that people rarely question it. If you don't follow teams, don't know scores, and don't feel emotionally invested, you're often labeled as boring, cold, or indifferent. But that label couldn't be further from the truth. Not caring about sports does not mean you lack passion. It doesn't mean you don't feel deeply, and it definitely doesn't mean you're emotionally detached from life. In many cases, it means the opposite. It means your emotional energy is being spent somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere more personal, somewhere that doesn't involve screaming at a screen over something you can't control. To understand why sports matter so much to so many people, we have to look at the brain through an evolutionary lens. Humans survived by forming tribes. Belonging wasn't optional, it was essential. Your group protected you, fed you, and kept you alive. And even though modern life looks very different, the brain hasn't fully caught up. That ancient wiring still exists. Sports tap directly into it. Teams become tribes, jerseys become symbols, stadiums become gathering grounds. When someone watches their team play, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical involved in trust, loyalty, and attachment. On a neurological level, the brain isn't saying, "I enjoy this entertainment," it's saying, "These are my people." This is why sports feel personal to fans. When their team wins, it feels like a shared victory. When their team loses, it feels like a personal failure. The brain blurs the line between identity and observation. Suddenly, a group of strangers wearing matching uniforms feels like an extension of the self. And when that identity is threatened, the emotional response is intense and real. Anger, sadness, euphoria, despair. None of it is fake. The brain doesn't know it's watching a game. It only knows it's protecting something it believes matters. But here's the key difference. Not everyone's brain accepts that illusion, and that's where the divide begins. People who don't care about sports have lower reliance on group identity. Their sense of self isn't built around belonging to a collective narrative. They don't feel incomplete without a tribe cheering in unison. Instead, their identity is more internal, more self-contained, more individual. They're more likely to ask, "Does this actually matter to my life?" rather than, "Who am I supposed to support?" Research shows that people with low sports interest display less us versus them thinking. They don't instinctively divide the world into sides. They don't feel the need to defend a group to feel secure. Their psychological boundaries are quieter but stronger. Now we need to talk about dopamine, because this is where sports fandom becomes neurologically intense. That rush sports fans feel before a big play, that tight feeling in the chest, that anticipation, it's dopamine firing in the brain. And it doesn't happen once, it happens constantly. Every possession, every moment of uncertainty, every close call. Brain scans show that watching sports activates the same reward centers involved in gambling. The unpredictability is the hook. The not knowing is what keeps the brain engaged. This is called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most addictive reward schedule psychology knows. The brain doesn't care where dopamine comes from, it just knows it wants more. If sports don't move you, it's often because your dopamine system isn't triggered by vicarious competition. Watching someone else win or lose doesn't register as rewarding. And here's the part most people don't realize. This difference may be partly genetic. Research suggests that variations in dopamine receptors influence how rewarding competitive spectator activities feel. In other words, your indifference might be biological. You're not suppressing excitement. You're not resisting joy. Your brain simply doesn't tag sports as meaningful stimulation. So when someone says, "I don't understand how you don't care," the honest answer is simple. Your brain isn't wired to. Sports fans often experience something called basking in reflected glory. When their team wins, they say, "We won." When the team loses, the language subtly shifts. People who don't care about sports rarely tie their self-worth to outcomes they can't influence. Their sense of value isn't borrowed from external victories, it's internally anchored. That doesn't mean they feel less joy. It means their emotional stability is less vulnerable to randomness. They don't ride the same emotional highs, but they also don't crash when something outside their control collapses. Their self-esteem is quieter but steadier. Interestingly, sports fans often score high on empathy measures. They practice caring deeply about the struggles of others, even strangers. So why don't non-sports people feel that same pull? Because empathy isn't unlimited. It gets allocated. People who don't invest emotionally in sports often direct that energy toward relationships, art, ideas, creativity, personal growth, or social causes. Studies show they score higher in openness to experience. They're moved by music, beauty, philosophy, and meaning. They're not emotionally numb, they're emotionally selective. Their highs come from depth, not spectacle. For some people, indifference to sports has a history. Maybe they were excluded. Maybe gym class was a place of embarrassment, not belonging. Maybe sports culture felt aggressive, performative, or shallow. Maybe competition felt unsafe. Or maybe there's no trauma at all. Maybe they simply never found it interesting. Not every absence hides a wound. Sometimes boredom is just boredom. Sometimes opting out is a quiet act of self-honesty. And sometimes choosing not to care is a form of emotional self-respect. At its core, the divide between sports fans and non-fans is about how meaning is experienced. Sports fans find meaning in narrative, the comeback, the underdog, the rivalry, the story unfolding in real time. People who don't care about sports often find randomness meaningless. They ask, why should I emotionally invest in something I can't influence? Neither side is wrong. One group finds meaning through witnessing, the other through participating. One seeks story, the other seeks agency. Both are deeply human needs, expressed differently. So if you don't care about sports, you're not missing something essential. You're not disconnected from humanity. You're not broken. Your brain simply prioritizes meaning differently. Your reward system, your empathy, your identity, they're tuned to another frequency. The next time someone asks, "Did you see the game?" and you genuinely couldn't care less, remember this. You're not boring, you're not strange, you're just playing a different game. One where the stakes are personal, one where the outcome actually touches your life. And if this resonated with you, there's a good chance you process the world differently in other ways too, ways that might be your greatest strength. One of the most overlooked things about people who don't care about sports is how comfortable they are with silence. While others need noise, commentary, chants, and constant stimulation to feel engaged, you often find meaning in the spaces between events. You notice how rooms feel when nothing is happening. You listen when conversations slow down. You're not waiting for the next highlight to tell you how to feel, and that changes the way you experience the world. Silence doesn't make you restless, it makes you aware. It gives your thoughts room to breathe. In a culture addicted to constant reaction, that ability can look like indifference, but in reality, it's presence. You're not absent from the moment, you're fully inside it. Everyone has a limited emotional budget, even if they don't realize it. Attention, care, concern, excitement, all of it costs something. People who pour hours into watching games are spending that emotional currency somewhere specific. People who don't care about sports are simply investing it elsewhere. You might spend it on understanding people, on noticing patterns, on creating something from nothing, on thinking deeply about life in ways that don't always have an audience. That doesn't make you less passionate, it makes you intentional. You don't give your emotions away easily. You want them to matter. And that's why when you do care about something, it runs deep. It's not loud, it's not performative, it's real. There's something quietly rebellious about not being moved by spectacle. Modern life constantly demands your attention. Big moments, big reactions, big opinions. Sports fit perfectly into that machine. But some people instinctively resist it. They don't feel the need to amplify their emotions just because everyone else is doing it. They don't confuse intensity with meaning. They're less interested in what's exciting and more interested in what's true. That doesn't mean they reject joy, it means they're selective about it. They don't want borrowed excitement, they want experiences that change them. And that preference shapes everything from how they spend their time to how they define a life well lived. At the end of the day, the question isn't whether sports matter, it's what matters to you. Some people feel alive when they're part of a roaring crowd, swept up in a shared moment they'll talk about for years. Others feel alive in quieter ways, in long conversations, in focused work, in learning something new, in understanding themselves a little better than they did yesterday. These moments don't come with trophies or parades, they come with clarity. And maybe that's why people like you don't chase the same highs. You're not looking for distraction, you're looking for meaning. And that search, even when it's quiet, is deeply human. There's a moment almost everyone who doesn't care about sports recognizes instantly. You're in a room where something big just happened. Everyone reacts at once, shouting, laughing, groaning, and you're just still. You look around and realize you're the only one not feeling it. That moment can feel isolating, not because you want to join in, but because you're reminded that you experience excitement differently. And over time, that teaches you something important. You learn how to stand alone without needing approval. You learn that being out of sync doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means your internal compass isn't controlled by the crowd. And that skill, the ability to remain grounded while others are emotionally swept away, quietly shapes how you move through life. Most of the world rewards loud emotions. Big reactions get noticed, subtle ones are overlooked. But people who don't care about sports often develop a relationship with depth instead of noise. They don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. They don't chase peaks just to avoid valleys. They're willing to sit with complexity, with ambiguity, with unanswered questions. And that willingness changes how they think, how they love, and how they grow. They're not immune to emotion, they're fluent in it. They don't broadcast what they feel, they explore it. And in a culture obsessed with spectacle, that quiet inner life might be one of the most powerful things a person can have.